Welcome to Hack the File. I'm Michael Lopez, and today we're going to be um, doing the second lesson in the Python edToGo series. And my hair is all messed up, but enjoy. All right, so we're back on these learning Python edToGo lessons. So let's just start. Welcome back. In the last lesson, you created a simple Python program and got familiar with IDLE. In this lesson, you'll continue exploring Python by discovering how Python stores data and how you can get it input from users. A variable is a name placed in memory where you can store a value as the program runs. These values can be either numeric value or strings. A Python and Python works with each differently, so we'll start there. This lesson also shows you a few of the more common mathematical operators and some of the special things you can do with Python as you work with numbers. Finally, you'll put new knowledge of numbers and string variables to use as you learn how to get input from the users. After all, programs that simply print information aren't nearly as fun as the ones that interact. Input in Python may be a little bit different from what others you've used with higher level languages, so we'll be sure to spend enough time on this to get you comfortable with the Python methods. With all that being said, let's move on to chapter 2 and learn about variables. Okay. If you've ever written computer code in any other higher level languages like C++ or Java, then you're used to the first declaring your variable before you use it. In other words, you'll write a line of code that tells the computer to set aside memory to be formatted as a certain data type so you can use it in your program. One of the features of Python is there's no need to do that to declare your variables. Instead, you just write your code with the name of the variable you want, followed by the equal sign, and then the value you want stored in that location. For example, if you want to store a value of 10 in a variable named shoe size, you write this. So this is how I see variables. Okay. Now, variables are important because they're what run your program. I mean, that's how your program runs, right? It uses variables. Um, so this is how I see variables. This here is like a little box, just a small box, okay? And you equal it to whatever value or string that you want to value it, right? And so this one is 10, so I'm taking 10 numbers, right? Or a whole number, whatever, and I'm putting it in my little box. And in my little box, I'm going to put this on it. I'm going to say shoe size equals 10. So then, like in a black marker. So I know that in that little box called shoe size that I named it, the variable, it's got 10 inside of it. It's got 10, this inside of it. That's how I see variables, okay? And it's an easier way to see them for me. Now, later on, you're going to use like arrays and stuff, and I see that as a bunch of little variables or a bunch of little boxes inside a room, and that room is called something, okay? But right now, that's how I see a variable, okay? And that's how I'm going to refer to it sometimes until we get over that, and then we just call them variables, okay? The variable can store a whole number as example above, or a number with a decimal point as shown here. So decimal point shoe size. So he's saying that in this little box called shoe size, I want to put a 10.5 inside of it, and then when I use this variable in my code, it's going to show this because this is what's inside of it. Okay. There's no need to explicitly tell the computer what kind of value the variable is storing. In fact, the variable can store a whole number and then immediately switch to storing a decimal. It doesn't make any difference to Python. Try it. Open a new code and type the statement above. Be sure to print the value of shoe size after each assignment, as shown in the following figure. When you run this code, you'll get two lines of output, one showing value 10 and the second one showing value 10.5. So let's do that. So let's open our IDLE. And remember, this is the IDLE. And we're going to do a new. And What did it want us to do? Okay, so shoe size. So shoe size equals 10. Okay. Print shoe size. I'm going to copy this and paste it because I'm used to doing that because you don't want to mess up your variables. Then we're going to change it to shoe size. I'm actually going to just copy this too. Okay. Add stuff to 10.5. All right, let's see if that runs. Now remember, we're going to have to save it before we run it. I'm going to call this test 7. Save it. All right, so 10.5. It worked. So it didn't in Python. It didn't matter if it was a whole number, integer, or like a double, which is a decimal or a float. Okay, it didn't matter, and that's awesome in Python. Okay, all right. About variable names. Now it's a good time to mention something about variable names. Python allows you to choose pretty much whatever name you want as long as the variable name starts with a letter and contains only letters, digits, or an underscore character, like this one, right? You can also begin your variable name with the underscore character, but doing this has a special meaning in Python. You will learn about that later in the course, but for now, hold off on doing it. Listing keywords. Another restriction for your variable names is keywords, or reserved words. These words have special meaning in Python, and you are not allowed to use them in your variable names. So your little boxes, variables that store information, you can't name them any of these keywords. If you want to see a list of Python keywords, type in the following prompt. So we're going to type that in because I want to see what keywords we can and can't use. So import keyword. And then I want to print keyword dot klist kw. Oh, see, that actually lets me kw list. Actually lets me. That's what's cool about these IDLEs. All right, we're gonna run that. And here's my keywords. So you can't name a variable false, none, true, and, as, assert, async, await, break, return, try, while, with, or yield. You can't use these keywords because in Python they're functions and they mean something. Okay, so let's go ahead and close that. Oh, that lagged a little bit. All right, so now we know what keywords we can't name our variables. Notice that the above code uses all lowercase letters with an underscore character separating the words. So these are all undercase. I'm sorry. Anyways, yeah, they're undercase. Yeah. This is the style Python programmers typically use when naming their variables. While this is the way most people do it, you certainly feel free to use whatever combination of upper or lowercase letters you want. So when I program, I use lowercase letters for variables. So like name, this is a variable, right? I use lowercase, and then for like arrays and bigger stuff, I use uppercase. That's just how I do it. Before we go any further, and sometimes I actually use uppercase letters in more important variables. So I don't know, I'm weird. Before we go any further with numerical values, let's switch gears and take a quick look at strings. A string is a sequence of zeros or more characters. As you learned earlier, you can make strings literal by enclosing them in double quotes. You did this when you wrote your hello world message in the print statement. Remember that you can use variables to store numeric values, as you did with shoe size. Examples: you placed the variable name and followed it with an equal sign and the value that you wanted to store. However, Python strings are a bit more complex with numeric values. You aren't required to enclose strings in double quotes. It's perfectly okay to enclose strings with single quotes instead. This means that the following two lines of codes are the same in Python. So this guy's variable is equal to Python, right? And you use the double quotes to like for strings. It's called a string because it's a string of characters, right? Which is letters, and it could be a name, it could be anything. It could as long as it's got characters, right, or letters. And name equals Python. So they're using single quotes or double quotes to show you that they're putting a string into this variable. Okay, that's easy. At first, you might think it's a little silly to have different methods. One method should suffice. However, giving you this option, Python is really helping you out. So let's try it. To see why having two different options for quotation marks is useful, type these lines of code into the interpreter and see what you get. Okay, let's do it. Let's always do the try it's. Well, actually, I'm going to copy this. See, this is a time where you can copy. I always say type it in, but I'm going to copy and paste this because, yeah. Okay, so what happened is that this guy's variable quote is he's trying to say he wants it to say this because he did the single quotation marks at the end. So he wants it to literally say the women all said hello with the double quotation marks in hello. Okay, now we're going to run that and see if that's true. See, and that's what came out, right? The women all said hello, and it's got it printed out. It's double quotation marks. So that's the cool part of you can use either or, right? Okay. You'll find that when the print statement executes, you'll actually get those double quotes in your output. We did. As shown below, do you see what happened there? The outer quotation marks, the single quotes, define the literal string, and the inner ones, the double quotes, were shown literally. That's pretty self-explanatory. That's easy. Escape sequences. Once you've done programming in other languages, you probably already know about escape sequences. This is basically just putting a backslash character backslash in your string to give the computer notice that the next character means something different. For example, if you prefer using double quotes to define your literal string, then you can always put the backslash character before double quotes within your string. The result should be this. So let's run this. I want to see what this does. Because I've never used the backslash when I wanted to do. Oh, this is not the one. And did I close the wrong one? I did. Dang it. Okay, we'll paste that. I'm gonna have to save it again. Gosh. Alright. The women all said hello. So I've never used that. That's pretty cool. The women all said, so now he didn't have to put the single quote. He used the backslash saying that this is going to be part of the code. Part of the string. So putting this little backslash right here says that, okay, so now this right here is going to, you want it literally like that. And then he wanted literally this code in there after that, which, why do you have to put that extra in there? Couldn't he have just taken that out? Oh no, because, yeah, I don't know. But anyways, it came out right? So it worked the same way as the other one. In the above example, the backslash character tells the computer that the double quote should literally be part of the string and that they are not making the end of it. So remember that you have a choice to feel free to use whichever method you want when you're writing your program. Okay, try it. Now we're going to try this different one. So I'm going to copy and paste this because I want to make these videos kind of fast, and typing them in is going to take a little longer. And I want to get through the learning process. So you should type it in if you haven't done a lot of coding. Type it in so you get an understanding of what you're doing more. But I'm just going to paste it because I want to make these videos quick, like I said. So text equals 1/ T2/N3. So before we leave the topic of escape sequences, here are two more. The tab character /T and the new line character /N. Type the following code to see how they work. Okay, so this one's going to tab it and this one's going to new line it. So let's run that and see what happens, right? That's what it did. So it said 1. So it put 1, and there's your 1, and then /T2, it tabbed it over and put a 2, and then /N, it put a new line and 3. Okay, now let's mess with this a little bit. So now I want to come in and I want to say, all right, let's tab 2 and 3, right? Now what it did was it tabbed it. Instead of new lining it, said 1 tab 2 tab, because I T2 T3, I tabbed them both. Okay, now let's mess with this another little bit, and let's put them all on new lines. Okay. So it did 1 new line, 2 new line, 3, because that's what I put in there. Now the power of not copying and pasting is this, right? The power of typing is, that's why I say you should type yours in instead of copy and pasting, is because not you will understand what you're doing while you're typing it. So now let's make this string, and I'm going to type it in, right? So we're going to say 1. We're going to say, okay, so text equals 1, right? But I want to do a tab on it. I want to scoot it over. So you're going to go / and then tab, and then I want to say, okay, then the next one is 2, right? And then okay, but then I want the third definition of this variable, or the third value of this variable, to be on the next line. So you put / n, and then I want a 3. And see, that's the power of, like, when you're instead of copying and pasting, you're texting in yourself, so you're understanding what you're doing while you're doing it, right? And so boom, so that's what it did. 1 tab new line. So yeah, all right, next one. From the output, you should see that there is a tab between 1 and 2, and then the 3 is on the next line. Again, these are very useful when you're formatting your output and easy to read. Another interesting and useful twist in Python programming is that you can mix numbers and strings. Remember how you learned that you can make a numeric value hold a whole number at one point, and then the number with and then a number with a decimal? Well, you can actually have a variable followed by a string. This means that you can have a program that does something like this. So it's the whole number values, and then you're changing data to 4, data to that, and then data to string. So whole number, decimal, strings. These are different values. None of these scenarios are a problem for Python, and your code will run without problems. Try it. All right, let's try it. We're going to try all these, okay? And this one you can't copy and paste. You have to write this in here. So data equals 4, and then print equals. Yeah, we're going to print the data. Yeah, I'm going to copy and paste this though. You type it in. I'm going to copy and paste it, or you don't have to type this in that many times, but just to make sure you know what you're doing, right? You can see what you're doing. So first the data equals a whole number, which is 4, and then we're going to print it. Then we're going to say, never mind. We want to change our data to negative 12.5, which is a float, right? And then we say, nah, never mind. We're gonna change this, which is a decimal. I mean, then we're gonna say, nah, never mind. Let's change this into yo, and then print it, right? Let's see if that runs. So it's saying, okay, we took data, the variable data, and we assigned it a 4. We put 4 inside the little box, all right? We put 4 on that variable, which is a whole number, which is usually is an integer. And then we said, okay, we're gonna never mind. I'm gonna change the data. I want it to be a double or a decimal number, which is not a whole number, right? It's a number and a half, right, or whatever. So you say okay, and then you changed it, and then it knew what you were doing, and then you said okay, nah, never mind. I want to make data mean yo, like what's up, yo, I'm data, and it made that a string, right, a string of characters, which is yo. And again, it's just flexing it's flexing its power, right? It's showing you how cool Python is all that's doing, and then it's actually showing you how it works, because in other languages it would show you that you have to name the variable, right? And it's showing you this one that you don't. Okay, so that's pretty cool. All right, we're gonna have about 10 more minutes. See how far we get, and then I'm gonna close this up. I'm gonna try to get down to the next chapter. Or where are we at? Escape zones and multi. All right, so probably just finish this up. So here's one final thing to note about variables and assigning them value. Python will actually let you assign multiple variables different values in the same line of code. In other words, you don't have to place each variable on a separate line. Try it. Go to the command prompt. What is it? Command prompt. Should have been like IDLE. Go to the command prompt and type the following. All right, we're gonna actually type this one. So no, that was right. Comma b equal 1/2. Then we're gonna print a, and then we're gonna print b. All right, we're gonna run this, and we're gonna explain what it's doing, or it'll explain here in the lesson. So it's got one, it's printed 1 and 2. Okay. All right. And it's gonna explain why. When you run it, you'll see that you just gave A the value of 1 and B the value of 2. So A, because this is the first one, you gave it the value of 1, and then B gave it the value of 2. And these are variables. Okay, remember, this is just a box, and you're saying, okay, put 1 in that little box. B, put 2 in that little box, right? Okay, and I'm gonna stop using the little box example now, since I'm sure you get it already. So I'm just gonna say variables. So this variable and this variable have these values in them. And then it says print A and print B. Now I could have printed A, comma, and then B, and it would have did the same thing, and I probably would have printed on the same line. This might not come as much of a shock to you. However, you've done this in C#, C++, or Java. You know that this isn't possible in those languages. It isn't, and it sucks. Some programmers don't like the syntax like that, but others do. It does cut down the number of lines of code, which is good. And keep in mind it's an option you can use. Now this would be awesome because it cuts down the lines of code, right? But it would probably be hard to read. Okay, I have not had to deal with it, so I really don't know. I would assume it would be, or I would think it would be harder to read when you're going through a whole line of, like if somebody used about 10 of those in a row, and then you kind of go, okay, wait a minute, which one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the other side to see what it's meaning, right? So that might be a pain. I would probably only use like maybe sets of 3, so it's easy to understand. I don't know. Okay, user inputs as strings. What fun is programming if it just spits out words and data for the user? Sure, there are times when you want to present information to your user in the form of an output. However, for really interesting programs, you want to get data from the user too. So that's what we'll look at next. There are 2 basic ways to get input from your user. Both methods work the same, but one enables you to read and the other's user responds as a string. The other's read is as a number. Let's start the string method. Let's not do this yet because we're running out of minutes. I'm gonna do a recap on what we just learned. Let's do this in the next video, and then that'll probably finish it up for this chapter. This is actually going into user input and inputs and stuff. So let's stop it there and let's go back and let's look at the variables. Okay, let's do a recap real quick. So what we learned in this little video already is like the most important things about programming, right? Is your variables, okay? And I think that's all we did was variables, right? So your variables. That's why this chapter 1 is variables. So storing numbers. So like it says, you're storing numbers, you're storing strings, and so we all know that there's different kinds of values, right? There's of numbers. There's whole numbers, and then there's decimals, right? So those are two different values. Okay, the computer has to decipher whether which one is the other, right? Usually. And so, but in Python it doesn't matter. Okay, so your variable here is your shoe size, right? Your variable is going to be like a box, a little box, or a locker, or anything, right? And you name it whatever you want, okay? And then you put a value in there, which is an integer or a decimal, right? And in computer language, they call it a whole integer is a whole number, and then like usually a decimal is like a float or a double, okay, or something like that, right? Now you go to your next thing, and remember that you can name your variables anything, except that there's keywords that you can't use because Python uses them as functions. So like return, you can't make a variable and say, okay, return this, because return equals 10, because return is probably used in the library of Python as a function or something. So it's something that Python uses in its library or as a function, right? So you can't use that as keyword, okay? And then a string. So your variables can either be strings, decimals, which are like doubles or whatever, their decimal number, or what did I say? Or a whole number, right? And so a string, okay. So we all agree that that one of these things, one of these letters, is a character, right? And this A is a character, this L is a character, this U is a character, and that's one letter, right? So a string, okay, is either is something that's a string of characters together, right? And so in order to use to make a variable have a string in it, attached to it or in it, you have to put quotation marks or single quotation mark, right? So, and that makes it a string. So I can say, like Python, I can say Mike, name equals Mike, but so I have to put the quotation marks. Now if I want to put it as an integer or a whole number like 10, I don't have to put the quotation marks. That's the difference, right? So then 10 will be in name. Now if I want to put a 10.5, right, it was a decimal, they don't care, they don't care. I just have to put just 10.5, right? But numbers don't need the quotation marks, okay? So recap on that. And a string can be a whole sentence, it can be anything, right? And we already learned that. And then we also learned that print puts it out to the screen, and then you put a parentheses, and then you put your variable that you want to print out to the screen. So we learned that too, okay? And then escape sequences. You can use the \n to put something on a new line, \t to tab it over, a backslash just to show that the next thing is part of the code. Okay, and that's escape sequences. And that's what we learned so far. Okay, and those are the most important things in programming, is your variables, to understand what a variable is, because you're going to use variables constantly. Okay, constantly. That's what you're using. That's what your code is variables. And that's why they teach you this right off the bat. Variables is the first thing you learn. It's very important. So recap on that. Go through and redo this video, and then you'll understand a little bit more about variables, okay? And that's very important. So, all right, this was HackTheFile. I hope you enjoyed this Python lesson. It's a beginner Python lesson. I'm learning too, because I'm not a Python guy. So, see you on the next video, and have fun.